because we thought you all could keep an open mind. Okay? And that's why both sides kind of came to an agreement that you were the people that we wanted for our jury. And so I just want you to make sure that you're going to be able to listen to all the evidence here and not make prejudgments about what you've heard now and what you're about to hear when we start taking testimony. Another thing I'd like to point out is that the lawyer's statements are not evidence. So each side basically has a theory of their case, and we present it to you. Okay? And you kind of fit in, you hear what the evidence is, and you figure out what the facts are. And you decide what the law is. And the bottom line is you come to a decision about what you think should happen in this case. Because the lawyer's statements are not evidence, and that is in your jury instructions as well, page 4. I'm here to tell you that what Ms. Arenio just said, all of that stuff she said, not evidence. All the stuff I'm going to say, not evidence. Okay? So what we're talking about is what we think what our theories of the case are here. Okay? And then you're going to hear the evidence, and you're going to figure out which stories kind of mesh, and which don't, and which ones are kind of outlandish and which ones aren't. And that's your job, is basically as a jury, decide what those facts are and apply those to the law and come to a decision. Now you've heard the state's theory of the case and what they think what they expect the evidence will show. And Ms. Arenio went on and on. She talked a lot about different aspects of the case. She talked about insurance. She talked about Alan Flores, who you will be hearing abundantly about. Okay? She talked about Travis Tetro. Okay? She talked about Stan Cook, the roommate that she had mentioned that was living with Dale and Marissa at the time and their 3 children. She talked about finances. She talked about the trust fund. And the list basically goes on. She went on for a while and talked about different things. But I'm here to tell you that this case is it's not about any of that stuff. Okay? That's the state's attempt to get to premeditation. But in this case, what we have here, if you just look at the basic facts, I'm going to tell you a secret to this case. It's basically, there's 3 things that I want you to take with you. 3 things, okay? And those 3 things at the end of the day, I believe, are what is going to decide this case. Okay? First thing I want you to remember. Marissa called 911 right away. Okay? You'll hear testimony from the first responders probably today that she had fresh blood on her. And when she asked immediately, she said it was her husband's blood. Okay? So this happened immediately. And she didn't call once. She called twice. She called again. Okay? She wanted to make sure that this was reported to the police. And you'll also hear from the first responders, like I said, probably today, if not Monday, that her demeanor at the time was basically she was hysterical. She was in hysterics. They couldn't even understand what she was saying. And I think that's a really important aspect of this case. Okay? Second thing, the victim in this case, Mr. Harrell, was Dale Harrell. He was Marissa's husband. And he was severely injured by this beating with the hammer. But he was taken to the hospital, and he was treated for his injuries. Okay? And the evidence will show that his condition was, at the time, actually improving over time. So he was being treated, and he was improving. Unfortunately, Mr. Harrell succumbed to what's known as a pulmonary embolism at the hospital and later died. And it was the cause of the death can be attributed to the beating. But the fact that he lived for a while and didn't die right away, I think is very important. Okay, so keep that in mind. And then, finally, when the officers arrived on the scene, they not only met Marissa. You'll hear evidence that they met Stan Cook right there. He was at the house, came right out of the house. Okay. Stan had a gun on him. He had a gun on him. Okay. And there were other guns in the house. Had this been a planned event, why wouldn't she have just told them that, shot Dale and told him that was he was trying to hurt me, so I shot him. It would have been so much easier. It'd be so much less messy. I mean, you can look at our client. Look at how tiny she is. Okay. Dale was a big guy here. Why would she take a hammer and hit him over the head if there were guns in the house? I mean, she was planning this. So keep all those facts in mind. Those are very important. Okay. And now I'd like to talk a little bit about some of the other things that you're going to hear in this case. First thing, Alan Flores. You're going to be hearing a lot about Mr. Flores at this trial. But what you don't know, I think we've alluded to it a little bit in in some of the preliminary statements that you've heard. Mr. Flores has been given immunity. Do you know what immunity is? Immunity is basically when the state wants somebody to testify, they grant that person immunity. Okay? That means that whatever he says during the course of this trial, during the course of his testimony, cannot be used against him. Okay? State can still prosecute him if they, for other charges. But basically, he is free and clear for this trial. And because that's the case, the state has a deal with him. That there is an agreement. Okay? So when you have an agreement, everybody knows that an agreement means that one party gets a benefit from the agreement and the other party gets a benefit from that agreement. Okay? So the state is getting the benefit of Mr. Flores' testimony here. And Mr. Flores is getting the benefit of not being prosecuted for certain crimes. Okay? And you will hear what those crimes are. One of them is for child pornography, for accessory to homicide in this case, for obstruction of justice, okay, and for false reporting in this case. Okay. State is giving him a pass because they want his testimony so bad because they want to get to our client right here. So you're going to have to keep that in mind throughout this trial. Okay. You heard a lot about the finances and the promissory note of $300,000 worth of loans that Mr. Flores was providing to our client. What you don't know is that Mr. Flores is a control freak. Okay? He was keeping a ledger of all this stuff. Okay? And not only was he keeping a ledger, he was basically jacking up the prices. Okay? So, like, for example, half gallon Mountain Milk was like $4.50 or something, and he was keeping detailed lists. But that is part of Mr. Flores' character. Mr. Flores is a very rich man, okay, but he uses his money, his finances, to control other people. And you're going to hear testimony here and see testimony that he likes to control people. He is a master manipulator. Now, at one point, we're going to concede that our client was trying to manipulate him a little bit. But in the end, Alan Flores, the master manipulator, controlled this situation. And he was controlling the whole thing from behind the scenes. You're going to hear all sorts of information about that. Okay? For one thing, they were talking a lot about insurance here in this case. But Mr. Flores is an insurance agent. Okay? He was advising Marissa on the insurance issues. So right there, that should be a red flag for you. Okay? What he was doing was trying to get her to a point with all these promissory notes that he was having her fill out. It was an effort to control Marissa and keep her in the relationship at some point. Okay? Because if you think about it, she signed all these promissory notes for him. What could he have done if she didn't pay? Where could he have gone? What is he going to take her to court? That really wouldn't be an option for him. So So this is really more about control than about money. Okay? And then his story just doesn't add up. This guy is a guy that went to Yale. He's a very smart man. He's got his own computer consulting business. Okay? He's telling us that basically the week before, Dale was, that Marissa had told him that Dale was killed with a tire iron prior in time. But he never contacted the police. I'm assuming he never went online to find out any information. And all of a sudden, about a week into it, he thinks, this is strange. I think I'll go over to her house. I insist that I come over to her house. That story is just preposterous. Why would a person not go to the police if he heard that somebody's husband was killed? Or why would he not, act on that information? At least look it up. I mean, it's not like it's not going to be on the news or something, right? So his actions toward the end of December 2008, January 2009 are very suspect. And you're going to hear a lot more about that. Okay, that should whet your appetite for that. We believe that Mr. Flores was trying to cover his tracks because he had a whole bunch of stuff that he doesn't want anybody to know about, but it's coming out now. And that's what's covered in this immunity. Okay? Now the insurance. Insurance, it really is a non-starter here. This I believe something the state is really grasping at. Many couples get insurance when they're divorcing. Many couples get insurance, multiple policies. And if there was really any problem with the insurance, most of you probably have insurance. I know I can't. If I want to insure somebody as a beneficiary, I know.
Sustain counsel's opening statement and argument.
Thank you, Judge. Let's talk about the insurance. The evidence will show that she never claimed she never filed a claim on any of the insurance here. Okay, and so that's a really important thing to take into account. The evidence will also show that none of the documents were forged, none of the documents were falsified, and believe me, the Gilbert Police Department checked. And the evidence will show that Dale had to have known about those policies. He had to have known. He had to have signed those in order for the insurance to kick in. Okay, the trust fund. The evidence will show that there actually was a trust fund. There is a trust fund for Marissa. She did have a stepfather. Her mother and her stepfather separated very early on. Her stepfather never had any other children, never had any other relationships. He had set this up for Marissa. Granted, it didn't contain millions and millions of dollars, but it had a substantial amount of money. Okay. And so when she's talking about this, she may have overinflated the amount, but there is a trust fund out there for it. And that, my understanding is that remains to this day. Okay. Stan Cook. Now, Stan lived at Marissa's house, and he was present at the house at the time when Dale was hit with him. The evidence will show that Stan did confess to the crime. He had a notarized statement, took it to first Tempe, as Ms. Arena pointed out. Then he took it to Gilbert because he didn't know the right police station to take it to, apparently. The evidence will show that Mr. Flores was the one who edited Stan's letter. He edited the letter. It was on his computer. And the problem with Stan testifying in this case, and you'll see him testify, he's a bright guy, but he basically has no memory. Okay? Because of the traumatic brain injury. He remembers some things, he doesn't remember other things. It's a documented fact. It's unfortunate, but it will make for an interesting trial. I mean, literally, it will be interesting. Travis Tatro. This here is another red herring. Travis Tatro was purportedly the hitman, hired by Marissa to kill Dale. Okay? But you got to ask yourselves, if she hired a hitman why would she have hit Dale over the head with a hammer? It doesn't make sense. And this is all coming from Alan Flores, a man who has been granted immunity to benefit the state. Okay. And under this theory, if Travis would have done it, then why wouldn't she have gone out and hired another hitman or whatever? That does not add up. And Alan Flores' story not only does not add up on that point, it doesn't add up on many other points. So you'll probably hear from Travis. He'll be coming in here. He looks a little bit scary, but he's actually really articulate and mild mannered. So you will hear from him. Now let's talk about this case. The essence of this case is about domestic violence. Okay? The evidence will establish that Marissa was the victim of domestic violence by Dale. And you'll hear expert testimony on that.